Hello, everybody, and welcome to Virtual TrekCon 5 with Sirach Lofton and Melissa Longo.
Hello, hello.
Hi.
My name is Ryan T. Hutz. Today we have a very special guest. Let's just get right into it. You know him as Dr. Phlox from Star Trek Enterprise, or just Enterprise. It is Mr. John Billingsley. Hey, John, how are you?
I'm fabulous. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much.
Is how I introduce myself, in hopes that eventually that makes it into the canon if I just keep telling people, Phil Phlox, Dr. Phil Phlox. Hi, Phil Phlox. So far, the canon has been resistance. It's my goal.
Did they never give you a first name?
No, they never did. I'm sure if it is, it's something like, Vlakenflox or Vivlamenflox. But I'll say good old Phil Phlox. MD/car dealership.
If it's Phil Phlox, it has to be spelled uniquely. You know, like PHHHLO.
Like philodendron, which would fit insofar as phlox is a flower. Philodendron phlox, alias Phil Phlox. Problem solved.
We did it.
Unlike Bob Picardo, the writers would always run and hide whenever I came up with an idea. Picardo would always convince them, yeah, I'm an opera singer. Yeah, I'm having an affair with Jerry Ryan. I could never get them to do shit for me. The door is locked. I'd slip my script ideas under. They'd be pushed right back out again. You bastards.
Was Phil Phlox one of your ideas? Come on, guys. Phil Phlox.
Phil Phlox, come on. No, one of my ideas is we stop and we pick up a stranded spaceship full of denobulans, and they're all brought on board, but they're all like Oscar Madison. They leave their dishes lying around, their underpants, and they all look like me. It's like the entire crew is like, get these denobulans off the ship. I didn't like that idea.
That would actually be a fun Voyager idea. They had fun episodes every once in a while.
Yeah. They killed the fun. They killed the fun on our show. Where's the fun?
Lower Decks might do it.
Lower Decks, I think, actually has had denobulans.
Mm-hmm.
For all that we were the most populous species, I mean, we were the fuck bunnies of the universe. We had multiple wives. There were a gajillion of us. I was actually pushed off the planet. There was no room for me.
Like tribbles.
I kind of wonder, where are all the denobulans? Where are they? Where are we? I thought when I got the show, there'd never been a denobulan before, that we were like a monastic order, that, there weren't very many of us left. There were only 9. I was lonely. I wanted to be around. It turns out that, that we have this much elbow room because we've bred like rabbits. Which is a lesson for actors. Don't spend too much time on your backstory, because
they're going to change it.
Writers are going to have their own version.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Were you thinking up ideas and pitching them all the time?
No, I went in once, and that was it. It was only because I knew Picardo, and Picardo was always talking about how, he used to go in and blah, blah, blah. I thought, all right, I'll do that. So they let me into the office. First, he showed me the blackboard where they write what they call the cheesy crusties, all the episodes that people have pitched 1,000 times. So I looked at the blackboard full of cheesy crusties. It's like, that's my idea. That's my idea. I'm done. I'm done. I brought you 3 cheesy crusties, and I'm leaving now.
To go.
Well, that's funny.
John, can we ask you then, on that note, when you first, way back when, and you may have been asked this before, but when you first were going to audition for the role, did you get an idea of exactly who Dr. Phlox was and how you wanted to do this? Were you kind of feeling it out? Were you just saying, you know what, I'm going to try something different and see what happens?
No, they gave me no information whatsoever. They gave me a tiny little bit of, can you hear me okay? With the vacuum cleaners running in here.
Yep.
All right. They gave me a tiny little bit of information. They said that he was an alien and he should have a slight alien accent. But,
That's it.
I can work with that. So I just tried to come up with a bunch of funny voices with my wife, and she's also an actress. She ever graciously said, "No, bad sucks. No, bad. That's cat's tail." No, no, stinks. No, no. Eventually, I came up with the voice I kind of ended up using, which had a slight, maybe East Indian lilt. But I thought to make it more interesting that perhaps on his home planet, he's a bird. And in moments of joyous
Oh.
transport, he would squawk with delight. So I came in and, I only had the one scene. So my audition consisted of blah, 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 blah. And I get called back and I'm slightly less confident about the squawk, but I do it. And I go to network, and now I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, am I going to be a bird on television? All right. I come in, I squawk, blah, 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 I get the job. And all through the lead up to filming the pilot, I keep asking, am I a bird? They don't look like a bird. They don't dress me like a bird. Nobody says anything about being a bird. I'm like reading Audubon. I'm studying birds. I'm going out in the backyard. I'm trying to learn how to fly. We have a fucking table read. I ask Rick and Brandon to their face. I'm squawking during the table read. Guys, am I a bird? And Rick and Brandon, who are in cats, they just kind of look at me and go, Like, yes.
Thanks for the feedback.
So up until the day we're shooting the first scene, I have no idea. I say the lines, dress rehearsal, and Jim Conway, our director, says, John, quit fucking around, which is how I know I'm a bird. So I was kind of getting sort of like terrified at the thought I was going to be a bird. So I think it was a relief, but still, yeah. You audition for all sorts of things in this town, and sometimes you get the script, and a lot of times you don't. And in those
do you think that the squawk helped you then? It was what they wanted.
I thought it allowed me to capture what I think was really integral to the part, which is this guy is so happy. He's so enthusiastic about being here.
Yeah.
He doesn't care if he dies. This is the adventure of a lifetime. What a way to go. Which is what I loved about the character. He was exuberant and had a very philosophical attitude. I'm going to shut this off because it's driving me crazy. Pretend we're still talking.
Sure. Actually, what's funny about that exuberance is that it showed from day one in the first episode all the way through the end. And John, there are a lot of characters that we know in certain Star Trek series where clearly their character changes based on the writing or based on the actor as the course of the 6 or 7 or 4 or 3 seasons go on. But you seemed to have nailed it from day one, because that exuberance you're talking about, that positivity and that optimism, Captain, that started on day one. And you already had that, and it led all the way through like 97 episodes. Same type of
if I go back and I look at the pilot, but I can justify it to myself, I would say I'd probably want perhaps to dial down the level of enthusiasm. But on the other hand, it's like the kid who gets to go to the carnival. He's never been to a carnival before. Humans. So I don't even look at that and think, maybe that was wrong. He gets acclimated, like all people do, to new situations. So, yeah. To the first part of that point, some of what maybe I would have liked to have seen more of is where Dr. Phlox's interpersonal relations did take him perhaps on different kinds of journeys, because I don't think I had the opportunity to have that exploration. There was one lovely woman who played Ensign Cutler in the first season. Kelly Waymeyer, who died tragically young of a heart condition.
Oh no!
And she would have been my love interest. So not only did I think she was a wonderful actress in person, so it was sad her loss, but I think that also sort of, I lost the opportunity to have another level to the character's development.
Yeah. I've read in multiple places where fans, your Dr. Phlox was one of their favorite characters in Trek. Mainly because of you and what you brought to the screen. What do you think the writers got right or wrong with your character?
I mean, it's always so sweet when people say that, I mean, it's such you have to give so much always credit to the writers. I mean, it was their conception that I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to, bring to life. I don't take too much credit myself. I do think that there's a place where writers get to know actors on a series, and they perhaps can lean more into your strengths and avoid what might be perceived as your deficiencies. I think they recognized that I had good verbal skills, so I think they were pretty happy at allowing me to be recondite. And I think they didn't necessarily have a particular kind of humor landing in any of the other characters. A little bit with Trip, the kind of like a variant of the ship out of water guy, the fish out of water guy. But that too is more. There's always that role in Star Trek, the alien who looks at askance with a raised eyebrow at human foibles. I appreciated dumbass things. I appreciated the fact that the guy would eat anything that was put down in front of him. I kept asking them, can I just have stray bits of food lying around? Like I've always got a sandwich, in the.
That would be fun.
Yeah, I just think the guy was always like, it's like, don't take what that's been sitting here for weeks. Like, I'll be fine.
Well, he was in his lab feeding his many animals and there was these slugs. And then he eats the slug. Did you really eat a slug?
I didn't, but they did a good job making it look like it.
Yeah.
Some of the fans sort of felt that there might have been a slightly more dramatic cold open than that, as I recall. I think one fan review said something. I was watching Enterprise last night, and the cold open was basically the doctor feeding his fish, and then he eats something. It's like, I didn't really feel inclined to watch that episode. Fair point.
It's a good episode.
By the way, everybody at home, I did the work for you. I looked up recondite because I'd never, and of course it says abstruse. I'm like, now I got to look up abstruse. What's going on?
Yes,
okay.
Rarefied air. In
Okay.
other words, basically fancy pants for what the fuck is he talking about?
That works.
That's fun too.
That works.
I get
John, everybody's always talked about how, well, at least, I always hear about how smart you are. Like, John's a really smart guy. And that's just that's the rumor, when your back's turned, everyone talks about how smart you are. And I've always thought that.
I started that rumor, to be honest with you.
Oh, did you? Well, that was a great job. You did. It successfully translated and traveled well.
Yeah.
But no, I see all the books behind you, and it starts to add up now. And I'm thinking, oh, this you love reading. You like absorbing information, and it seems like you have all of this knowledge when I'm talking with you. It's like you could be the Dream Jeopardy contestant.
Well, one, I'm old, so my memory, the actual knowledge I have has to pass through the old man's synapses. So the answer would come out in a 45 or hour-long version of Jeopardy. I might stand a bit. Yeah, that's what they should have. They should have geezer Jeopardy, where it's just like people in their 90s, where it's like the whole thing is like, can he hit the button at all?
It's like,
on a similar
music
subject,
will be playing for a long time.
Yeah, it'd just be going whole symphony. Yeah. On a similar subject, I used to love to play Teen Jeopardy. I was like, I could get like a third of these. I'm pretty good at. I'm okay at Teen Jeopardy. Yeah. So maybe old person Jeopardy might be something that we could, put together.
Well, this is I pitched this a lot, which nobody has bought, is the idea that if they brought me back, it would be in a show called Old Fat Phlox, where it'd be like me sitting in a rocking chair at the beginning, like Edgar Buchanan in the old Petticoat Junction. Back in the day when I was an intergalactic space doctor, I had all sorts of adventures.
Oh my gosh.
Let me tell you a couple of stories. And then there'd be flashback music. And then it'd be like young Dr. Phlox running around in his underpants. And then at the end of it would go back to me. And I go, well, stay tuned next week for another exciting episode of Old Fat Phlox. I'd be one on the call sheet. I'd only have to work like an hour a week. Surprisingly, Paramount has not called.
Really?
This
It's a dream job.
Did you change your number recently? Maybe that's why.
What's happening? That's probably what's happening.
Check your spam folder.
Spamming Paramount.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask, where do you think Phlox went after you left Enterprise, but I think you answered it.
Yeah.
I think he opened a bordello, actually. I don't like to talk about that, but yeah, that's I don't know. He had a limited range of interests, really. I guess he went back. I went back home. You know, he was a veterinarian. Maybe he taught veterinary science. I like to think he wrote a few books. I bet he cooked. Actually, I always sort of envisioned him like Anthony Bourdain, like he's just traveling.
That's what I was going to say, Anthony Bourdain.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I think he had a cooking show for a number of years.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Be cool, like Padma Lakshmi. Yeah.
John, when the fans come up to you at conventions, what are some of the stories that you've heard about how your characters influenced people in their lives, and maybe caused them to do different?
That's a great
studies
question.
at school?
We all hear stories all the time about people who, you know, because they grew up watching Star Trek, decided that it was cool to be themselves. You know, I mean, I think that's the one we hear the most, that it was all right to not necessarily feel like you fit in. You didn't have to worry about trying to push yourself into a shape you weren't. But again, for me as a guy who played a doctor, what I hear a lot is that people say, "I really liked your bedside manner," and I really wanted to, as a medical student, kind of emulate what those qualities were, and that made me feel good because I again, all credit to the writers, but I appreciated that interesting combination of calm, sense of humor, seriousness of purpose, and firmness that the doctor had. I'd like to think that if I had a doctor, I'd have somebody who could make a joke but also didn't bullshit me. So that means a lot. That meant a lot.
Your character was very genuine in that regard.
Yeah.
Like he felt warm, but matter of fact. But there was definitely a genuineness and a warmness in the delivery and in the care and the respect for the care. It always felt like you were respecting the person with whom you were speaking, if that makes sense.
No, I appreciate that, and I do think that's true. And you know, one never likes to speak to one's own personal qualities because I don't know whether or not that's something the actor brings to the table or not, or whether or not it's just that's your job as an actor, is to capture that which is on the page. But I do, having spent many years both as a stage actor and then working for social service organizations, I find that so much of our life we have to go into rooms and we have to be deeply honest in a way that is not mean. In board meetings, in people who are afflicted, if you're at all in the social services, on stage. It's harder in many respects on a sound stage because time is fleeting, and although as actors we have to be problem solvers, we have to be extremely cautious about speaking up lest we be responsible for slowing down the day. But as a stage actor for 15 or 20 years, you have a huge responsibility to kind of say, guys, I really think we need to kind of look at what's not working here because we're just repeating the same problem. So could we cuddle up? And I found those qualities in Dr. Phlox to be very refreshing. He didn't bullshit. He was not a bullshit artist. He got straight to the point, but he didn't lose his sense of humor.
And there was no judgment either. It never felt like he was judging any of his patients. It was, as you said, always matter of fact. But there's a level of kindness too in his bedside manner as well. Yeah, no, it's funny because a career is such a strange thing. What I'm mostly known for outside of Star Trek is playing child molesters and serial killers. So
hopefully this covers it out a bit.
So
you also had a dark twist in the Orville, actually. Yes. Huge fan of the Orville. Great job sharing scenes with Robert Picardo, of course. Freaking amazing. The fans went nuts.
I don't know why, what it is that people perceive in you as an actor, but I have frequently played lunatics and psychopaths. So to play wonderful guy, a guy whose nature and sensibility is much more in tune with mine, who believes very deeply that there is a place for honesty and a sense of humor wedded together as you walk through the world. Um, don't bullshit. Keep your sense of humor. Don't bullshit. Keep your sense of humor. Dr. Phlox is probably the best part I've ever had a chance to play in terms of,
Nice.
what I thought it rang the bell for me more than anything else I've
Mm.
John, some people talk about the makeup and prosthetics being limiting their performance, and sometimes it enhances their performance. So, which one did you feel the makeup did for you?
Probably the latter if I had to choose between them. I certainly didn't feel it limited me. For one thing, I didn't have to wear an oral prosthesis, which I think is where you really get into trouble. I mean, I always thought, oh, the Ferengi, my God, to have to talk to that,
Teeth.
or the Klingons, the teeth. I didn't have
Mhm.
teeth. It's onerous if I was number 7 on the call sheet. This didn't happen a ton, but on those days or in those episodes where you're prominent, the additional burden of 2.5 hours in the chair at the beginning of a day and an hour to take it off at the end makes for a long week.
Mm.
But it didn't interfere with my ability to articulate. It didn't interfere, and it wasn't particularly hot. The eyeballs were a problem, these gargantuan blue eyes that they stick in you, and they
Mm-hmm.
can't account for the stigmatism. So I couldn't
Oh,
read. I couldn't.
Oh.
I could. My eyes wouldn't focus, and if I took the eyes out, it would hurt too much when I put them back in. So I had nothing to do all day except eat, which is unfortunate.
you better know
You
your
couldn't
lines
read.
well then. So like
Couldn't
that's
read.
it. You show up to set, your lines have to be memorized.
And I only became an actor because it seemed like a great reading opportunity. It's like, well, you're going to spend a
Right.
long time in your trailer getting to read. So, oh, that sounds great. So
Not
now
if you're
that was
Dr.
painful.
Phlox.
Yeah, that was painful.
Wow.
Yeah, Rick and
Oh,
Brandon
wow.
early on. This is a measure of what happened on our show. Like first 2 episodes, Crafty was like, "Ooh, there are petit four, and there's like French pastries, and there's." Then the ratings came in, and all of a sudden it was like, there are only 3 Doritos in that bowl, and that was all there was.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. You can always tell if you're a TV show actor, and you can tell when you got a hit and when you got a flop. Just
Yeah.
Yeah.
go to Crafty.
What a crap.
So
Yeah.
Rick and Brandon came by early on. I was having a petty four, and Brandon sort of sidled up and said, "You're the only person in this cast who can eat all the petty four he wants."
Oh.
Only Brandon could call you fat in such a delicate fashion. I was like, well done.
Yeah, you definitely could tell the budget by the craft service.
Yeah.
You get over to that craft service table and you start seeing snacks. You're like, whoa, they got this, they got that.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
They got chicken wings. What?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. Or conversely, it's like, is there mold on this? Yeah. We're not going to get rid of that until someone eats it.
Somebody's got to eat that.
Somebody got to eat
Is that the celery from yesterday?
Yeah. Then we'll get you another donut. But until somebody eats that one. Yeah.
Celery. Oh no.
Mr. Billingsley, if I can call you that.
Oh, you certainly can. Good heavens.
One
I'm
one
delighted.
question I've always had for you as I stared at you on the screen and was like, that is a freaking fun actor. He's really good. The question is whether consciously or subconsciously, were you ever harnessing anybody from your past at all in the slightest bit with Dr. Phlox or with another character? Sometimes we don't even realize it. We're just kind of like, am I harnessing my old PE coach a little bit? Like sometimes you just kind of sneak into that. Has that ever happened?
No. Nope. Never has. Not to my knowledge. I mean, you never know, but I don't think so.
And what about the other doctors, Star Trek doctors? Was there any kind of background information that you had to do on that research or?
No, I mean, I was not. I'd watched the original series when I was a kid, but I was a theater guy. I was traveling a lot. I spent a lot of years on the road. So the Next Gen, Deep Space with Apologies, Voyager years kind of, zipped right by me. I only moved to LA in 1995. I was a stage actor, and so when I got this audition, and then when I got the part, it was like, okay, I don't know who any of these species are. What am I going to do? So I had a pal come over and he gave me like a crash Star Trek course. It's like
Nice.
Romulans, and he showed me select episodes. So I kind of got. So I didn't like have the whole legacy of all the doctors, in my head. So I didn't have any. There was no influencing going on at all.
Okay.
Now I will say,
And what about the original series? Any kind of, Dr. McCoy, any of the original series cast
no, it didn't seem
influence?
to me that my character had anything, there just wasn't any. I would never have thought of Dr. McCoy and Phlox having any
Yeah,
particular,
yeah,
commonality.
connections.
Well, you were the
Mhm.
I will say
first.
Bob Picardo, who I adore, and he's a dear friend of mine, but he sent me, because Bob Picardo's always tweaking me. He sent me like, "Dear John, just thought you might be interested in the results of his latest poll I read, where I
Oh
was
no.
voted the most popular doctor and you were voted the least popular doctor. Love, Bob."
What?
Like,
Aw.
well, that was
Was
that
there
was a
Doctor
push.
Wars?
That was a push poll conducted only within his immediate family. So once I,
Okay.
And the fact that it was close is scary then.
yeah. So I know whenever I see Bob, I know. And let's give a hand for the 9th most popular doctor on Star Trek. How
Oh.
to make sure I've got the right more shows now. Like,
Since yeah. Since leaving Enterprise, how has your relationship with Trek changed since before you
it's the
started?
weirdest thing because it's deepened in ways I would never have imagined. One, because I do a lot of charity work, and particularly with the organization I'm involved with now. And the Star Trek fans and the Star Trek community generally, the actors, everybody has been so generous and supportive of my efforts to generate attention and revenue for the Hollywood Food Coalition. So I've gotten more, I won't say enmeshed, I've gotten more involved in the Star Trek world than I've ever been. Um, but also, and my wife said this to me when I got this part. She said there are two kinds of people. One kind of person is the person who is always looking for somebody to buy him a beer in a bar. And this is a great gig for you because wherever you go in a bar, you can say, "Back when I was on Star Trek," and somebody will. I have learned to take advantage of that down the
Totally.
years.
Totally.
Rare bar.
And then you
can't-
squawk.
Yeah.
But let's talk a bit more about that. You're not just involved and enmeshed in, the Star Trek community, but you are a trailblazer and a leader among that, doing things like the Trek Talks recently for the third time, as well as running, being on the board for the Hollywood Food Coalition, if I remember correctly. You did the United We Trek, also PanCan. Can you talk a bit about PanCan and the great work that you and your pals do there?
Yeah, PanCan is a pancreatic cancer action network, and it's a wonderful organization that raises awareness because so much of the fight against pancreatic cancer is rooted in awareness. It's a very fast moving disease. If you can catch it early and get to the doctor fast, you've got a much higher surviving rate of survival. So this organization has done a marvelous job spreading the word. My mother died of pancreatic cancer at the age of 70 from diagnosis to death, 2 months. She didn't go to the doctor.
Oh.
She was having stomach issues, back issues. Never entered her mind that it could be pancreatic cancer. By the time she showed up at the doctor basically said, "Nothing I can do. Pancreatic cancer is a killer." Walked away, and she died. So much has changed in large part because of the awareness that this organization brings to the issue. More people understand, particularly if it's in their family, what it is that might be threatening, and more doctors understand that there are, in fact, now options available and treatments available, and there's more that can be done. So I'm very honored that Kitty Swink, who is herself a pancreatic cancer survivor, asked me to join their team. We help raise money throughout the year, but especially around the spring when there is a walk called Purple Stride in 60 plus cities all over the country, pancreatic cancer survivors, people who are lives have been touched by pancreatic cancer, come together and walk again to raise awareness. And like all walks, you raise money. You say, "Hey, who wants to sponsor me on my walk?" And that is our team. And it consists of me and Kitty and Armin, the wonderful Jonathan Frakes, whose brother passed away from pancreatic cancer, and recently Juan Carlos Soto, whose brother um, Manny Cotto was one of our showrunners.
Yeah.
So that's our team. We raise money, and if you go to Pancreatic Cancer Action Network, PanCan, and look up Purple Stride and look for our team, and the name of the team. It's an easy name to remember, and I never can. Team Trek, Trek the Team, Team Treksters. I didn't name it. All I could say is I would have called it John's Big Fat Team, but I didn't get a vote.
Yeah, it's like that password that pops up that you just can't remember what that password is.
I know.
Yeah.
We'll definitely find that. We'll track that down, and we will include it in the link below, everybody, so you can click on that and definitely support that. It's very important. But you were saying
infinitely more fluid talking about the Hollywood Food Coalition, because that has been a huge, big part of my life for the last 8 to 9 years. So that's where I can really sing my song.
John, I really want to commend you too, because you are one of the people in Star Trek that has dedicated so much of their time and energy into being charitable and doing things for other people. And I think that's really remarkable. I know Chase Masterson does a lot of work for people and shows a level of selflessness that's commendable. And I also would say that Armin and Katie, that you mentioned, that work that they do, but I think it's very admirable of you to use your celebrity and the platform to raise awareness about these kinds of issues. You mentioned why you chose pancreatic cancer, but just in general, I know you for being somebody who's always motivated to be involved, not like just somebody who's like, oh, I'll sign up, or yeah, I'll put my name on there. You're actually hands-on involved. I can see your enthusiasm, the energy that you bring when you're at these events. Is like it shows that you truly care. And I just want to commend you for bringing that kind of energy, spirit to the charitable work that you do.
Well, as we were talking about, and here it is, Trek Against Pancreatic Cancer.
Yep.
There you go. It's always been a big part of my life, and I think in large part, to be honest, I was a stage actor, and I lived on under $10,000 a year for almost 15 years of my life. I always checked underneath the sofa cushion before I went out to the bar in hopes that I would find enough money to buy a beer. I always knew who could buy me a sandwich. I was on food stamps. I was on, unemployment was a lifeline for me, and I know what it's like to scrape. And how random it is, how much fortuity goes into it, how little sometimes control we have over the things that can knock us down and knock us out. So particularly, even though I've been involved in a variety of different things in my life, for many years working with an organization that helped people who had HIV/AIDS, because from the theater community, obviously my father's gay, I knew a lot of people who were affected. But some animating impulse for me has always been finding ways to help people who are in need and people who need a leg up. I think a social safety net is a measure of a civilized society, and we live in, unfortunately, right now in a somewhat dark political period when the not just the necessity but the value of a social safety net is questioned. The idea that a Darwinian world actually asks us not to care about the other guy because somehow we're helping somebody who is not deserving. I find that philosophy to be, is antipathetic to my way of looking at the world. And I think it's antipathetic to the very nature of what Star Trek represents. And what I love about this franchise is that it echoes, supports, and is a huge clarion call to the world that says we only are healthy together. We are only happy together. We can only accomplish it together. it is. I'm not a religious person, but I am a spiritual person, and to me, Star Trek has a spiritual message that really resonates for me. You know?
Mm-hmm.
As I find it does for almost everybody in this franchise, which is why I find it very easy to actually generate attention and support for the causes I care about, because everybody's very, very receptive to helping and megaphoning. You know?
Absolutely. It's an amazing community.
It's amazing. It is. And one of the things that interests me personally is that I think there's a line, which I totally understand, particularly for young, attractive people who genuinely have to worry about, maybe there's a fan who might be. But I love to break down the barrier between fan and actor, because I think accessibility and communication, and we're all in this together, is what, one, makes this franchise unique, and two, it lifts all boats.
Yeah.
We started something that I really hope continues, called the Trektivism podcast, and it's just about having people on from the Star Trek community, particularly fans, who are doing really cool things, and hope we can share those stories, because so many people do so many lovely things in this world. It's hard to keep it in our heads, because the newspaper is fundamentally about shitty thing, shitty thing, shitty thing,
Right.
shitty thing,
Yeah.
right. Shitty thing. That's what a newspaper does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The world is composed of people who do fucking cool things,
Mm-hmm.
So a play on activist and Trek for this podcast, this Trektivist.
Trektivism, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I made that word.
Okay.
So
I like it.
we just got about a minute left, but everybody at home, there's so much more about the John Billingsley to talk about. All of his charities, all the great work that he does will be in the description box below, including some of the things we discussed, as well as some that we have not yet. But definitely go click on those links and start throwing money at stuff, because John does good work.
Kapow, boom, woo, yay! Etc.
Cue the music.
Yeah. All right. Well, everybody, thank you for hanging out with us. John, this has been such a pleasure. We really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so much for hanging out. It's been amazing. Lots of laughs.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Thanks for having me.
And everybody at home, hey, thanks for playing with us. We got way more to talk about, way more stuff on virtual TrekCon 5. See you soon. 5.